Hey, what's up, guys? I came across another one of these videos by Miloš Kičević, his YouTube channel called Amazing Places on Our Planet. This one in particular grabbed my attention because he did it in Argentina, and South America in general is my favorite place to mud fossil hunt, especially on Google Earth. And now with this newfound theory that's kind of going around about old world architecture, especially the Tartarian Empire that's been erased from history. How some of this architecture could have gone through some kind of event and turned into mountains, or been mud flooded and petrified, and became indistinguishable in the mountains over time. So, watching this video in particular, I was just like, wow, you're gonna just be so freaking blown away by some of this stuff. I think you really appreciate it. So I want to go ahead and narrate over this video as well, and I want to apologize in advance for not making the last video I did full screen, so I'll go ahead and do that now before I forget, because that'll help you see much better, of course. So we'll go ahead and play this now, and I'm going to start and stop, narrate over this, and hope you enjoy it and get you thinking a little more. Okay, as some of you may know, with the melted building theory, just to give you a little rundown, is that a lot of these mountains could potentially be old world architecture, Tartarian Empire buildings, where they mainly built out of bricks, and so the theory is that a lot of these lines are actually brick lines that have kind of eroded over time, and they seem to have gone through some kind of event where they melted down into their own footprint, like whatever they went through kind of weakened up to the weakest side here and made it melt down into its own footprint, because a lot of these buildings seem to be on a 45-degree angle on a diagonal here with their brick lines. So it seems like the weakest part of the building is collapsing first, and then they kind of start to melt and heat up into like a little footprint of how they used to stand up. Like this here again, potential building with the brick lines going through some kind of event, melting down. The weakest side of the building gives way first and melting down into its own footprint. Another thing I want to point out is that wind and rain erosion should be terraforming this whole area kind of generally the same. All the rock should be kind of eroded the same throughout the years as wind and rain erosion is taking place. But you do find these little pockets of survival, like this little area right here, where it looks more like even artwork, sculpture, or some kind of construction, some kind of building right here. Some perfect squares or triangles that fit into one another with these straight lines. So wind and rain erosion, as it's happening, is not going to just skip a certain area of rock here and let it remain perfect. So, there's something up to that, and you can kind of see it right here as well. Alright. And back here, looks like another one of those buildings kind of melting backwards, almost like a temple. You kind of see the flat top with the stair step right here going down the side. Possible doorway right here with the arch. Okay, see that like temple look to it. Again with the melting on the 45-degree angle on a diagonal. Well, check this out. This looks like a severed hand here at the wrist with some fingers, like a pinky right there. This guy on a motorcycle probably just drove by like, holy shit, was that a hand? I know I would anyways, because I'd have to stop here and like walk around forever. It just looks so amazing. I'll go back for a minute real quick. Sorry about that. This whole thing right here could be, a tightened body part because of that chopped hand, and it looked like it could have gotten chopped right in half right here. Like a slice, and then this was, the interior of the body with the hand chopped off laying there. And when you have areas like this, that you can kind of see maybe it could have been the brick line as well, like the building again. But we also have to remember that we have this red iron oxide in bodies and titans too, as one of the transition metals. So sometimes we also get that brick lining look to muscle and tissue as well. All the straps, ligaments, muscle tissue will also have these kind of compressed lines as well, with the iron oxide color. So you can't forget that some of these mountains, instead of being red brick dust, are probably some of the transition metals like the iron oxide that's giving it that red color. In this particular case, I think it is a titan because you have so many of these different transition metal colors than just the red, and potentially a smashed skull up here. So I do think this whole thing right here could be more of biology, more so than it is the brick line. Potential brick line up here in the corner. This is interesting here, the layering. Again, tissue and anatomy, muscle tissue can also layer like this, as well as the brick lines, so it's easy to get confused. But where it has this abrupt stop to it here and then turns into this flat blocking is kind of interesting. This little center going up right here is interesting as well. Nice little twist to it in there. Little people. You see here, again, it looks like the brick lines, but you can tell it's more to do with anatomy because of the curvature and twisting and turning of all of this stuff. Looks more like muscle than the way a building would be formed. Even if it was melted, it wouldn't be so curvy and twisted like this. So I'm leaning more towards anatomy on this one. This could actually be like the base of the spine where it meets the pelvic bone. Where it widens at the hips right here. Let's just go back a little bit so you can see what I'm kind of talking about. Okay, it could be the interior body of something where the spine or vertebrae would have came up through, widening here at the tailbone underneath, with like widening at the hips for the gut area possibly. Looks like a destroyed building there. Shopping mall. Maybe even a ship. And check this out. You can see the brick line's really good here. And it even looks like maybe some pillars or columns inside of there. It has a stair-stepping look, like a temple again. And that almost perfect trapezoid on top. Check that out though. Something under there for sure. Again, all your lines are either anatomy or brick lines. See these little pieces here, like little walls, stair stepping up from one another. Maybe another little kind of wall built here sticking out. Looks mud flooded. Potential building stair stepping here with the brick lines. You can see up here, a little window. Looks like part of a castle sticking out of the mud. Look at this creepy thing. Either some mud fossil mouse or frog or something. And they damn well know it too. I mean, that's why the thing's probably fenced off to keep you the hell out of there. That's crazy. This thing's interesting. Either some kind of spire tower, energy tower, or maybe kind of looks like a muscle to me, neck muscle, connecting that behind the skull here of some little mini dragon, maybe eye socket, mouth, beak area, maybe hatching out of an egg or something. But you can kind of see the brick line here, see the bricks in there. You can see how this is actually melting down rather than getting pushed up. This spot's interesting. Looks like a Titan laying in the fetal position. The ones I'm finding on Google Earth, a lot of them are kind of curled up in this fetal position, which makes sense. You know, if you're dying, I think most people will probably be in that position too. So if you're this could be the skull actually, with its head like half in the mud. Then you come up to the top of the shoulder, go down along the side of the torso, and then it curves down again at the hip. As we start again at the top of the shoulder, we can come down the arm here, and you can maybe make out some fingers. This area where the neck is kind of a thin, tiny crevice. Usually, you know, the neck's kind of a small area. So sometimes these skulls can detach from the body and be found a little further up here, or sometimes they just look detached because, like I said, the neck's kind of like a little crevice area and the mud flood comes over them right here. So this could just be either a decapitation, or it could be mud flooded over the top of it a little bit, just collecting some debris. And I think there's another Titan over here, so let's let it play. Okay, this looks like another Titan here. He's laying on his back, sprawled out. Okay, he's completely on his back, and what makes me think that is that this coloration of this brown rock here looks like the top of a rib cage. Again, the top of the sternum up here is kind of the base, the most highest point when you look kind of laying down. Even if you tried it right now and you lay down on your floor, this would be the highest point of view at the bottom of your ribs. So I think this is actually the rib cage. That's why we get this discoloring. And the rest of it, obviously, the transition metal color is the red iron oxide. So he's kind of like a third decayed first, and then maybe became petrified after he decayed for a while. And then, of course, the third eroded over God knows how long. The head looks like it's right here, like it's smashed down on the diagonal. So you're coming down the neck. You got the little chin hump there. The mouth, that actually could be the Adam's apple of the chin, mouth open right here, the nose peak, and then the eye socket right there. The head's just kind of smashed and flattened down, which would make sense of the weight of the great flood on top of you. In the back here looks like some of the buildings and brick lines. But see how we have this twisting of the lines up here. It's kind of could be more anatomy as well. So I think there's two big Titans right here laying side by side. pause it there so you can check them out. So, 2 family members possibly. Another thing to notice, the see why it's blacker down here is because your blood pools to your lowest extremities upon death. So over time, I think the blood just kind of drained down to these parts here, to your lowest extremities, because the heart's not pumping anymore. So you're getting, the blood's filling up in your fingers. The blood's flowing up in your lower extremities, trying to find its way out. This is really cool here. You can see the buildings, the brick line, from whatever event from above that causes these things to melt and cook. Looks like it cooked the brick color out of the top because, it was closer to the whatever heat source or whatever this event was. So this red brick color got cooked out of the top. But right here is a great example of this trapezoid temple pyramid shaped thing. More temple than pyramid, I would say. You have the corners here under 90-degree angles of the flat walls. The brick dust running down. Could be a demolished storefront right there in some little town. Brickwork. More brick dust, brick lines, building. Now this is really cool too. Could be little columns or pillars here. See little columns like all the design, or maybe a little statues all over a building or something. Very, very integrated and involved type of building and decorating, possibly. But this is also how anatomy petrifies with the layering of tissue, the muscle and bone. So you get the same effect. So that's why it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. But you could tell these things don't form naturally like this. I mean, well, they do, but it's a natural process that they don't tell us about. So the transition metals in the bodies is what's mineralizing and forming into mineralized rock. And then on the other hand, from some event, some of these places are melted, destroyed buildings, half petrified. See it really good here. All the brick lines. And if you look really close, I can see it on my screen, but I don't know if you can see that in yours, but little rows of these little windows here, like they're hallways, and you can look out the windows. You can kind of see them up here. Looks like some kind of melted wall down here. I mean, look at this freaking thing. Looks like some kind of spaceship or a 2-decker ship, like 2 deck levels. You can see the lines in it. I mean, look at these little things. Look like little lifeboats off the side or something. Crazy. Right here again, I think this is like a third decayed and eroded petrified titan body here. This a little massive, kind of like this gooey mass right here. That's this whitish color. The reason I think that again is because then we have this other area where I think it looks like a skull. Remember I was saying before where it looks like it's slightly removed from the rest of the body or slightly mud flooded over, because the neck is a kind of a little crevice area, a thin crevice area where these things the skulls either become detached from the body, or where these mud floods happen and it collects some debris in there. So usually when you have something that's the shape of a skull with a little space there and then another large mass in front of it or underneath it or whatever, those are the areas you gotta look at close, because it's usually a skull disconnected from the body. You can kind of make out like the 2 eye holes right here, maybe possibly a mouth. But the reason why it looks all blobby is because it was decaying and eroding probably for a certain amount of time before it became petrified. So it could have died before a petrification event. This all looks like building up here. I mean, look at this building up here. Look at the 90-degree angles, the railings up top. Absolutely a building. So, me knowing myself, if I was Aaron, I would definitely spend some time trying to get up there and go check that out. This over here too looks like a doorway to something, a little Stargate, who knows? A little window right here maybe. You can see how this is melting down, not tectonic plates pushing it up. It's melting down. Look at this area here. This could be a giant statue of a giant right here. You got these railings, different levels of these railings. Looks like a walkway through right here, a doorway for giants, or maybe this is the doorway right through here. Towers, pillars, columns. You can see them kind of bleeding through a little bit right there where they used to be. Definitely looks like the side of a big building. You can see the melting, the dripping. Some event, it's just deteriorating and melting down. Again, tectonic and lava. These type of events aren't going to have such a small footprint of activity like this. Okay, a tectonic plate in a little volcano is not going to have just a little fart in the land like this. I mean, you will get that with geysers sometimes. I understand that in Yellowstone or whatever, but even that, I think, is just from some kind of some event. That volcanic activity is from some kind of event from above, rather than volcanic heat coming from underneath. So again, like I was just saying, tectonic plates isn't going to have a little bump in the land here like this. It's over a much greater area of activity a tectonic plate would run. So this is simply here just because it was once something before, and that's why it's there in the first place. Oh, and let's not forget this cool looking building in the background here. Even maybe this one. Again, with the brick buildings melting down on the 45-degree angle on their diagonal, melting down on whatever side of the building is the weakest first, melting down to their own footprint. And God only knows what the fuck that is. Looks like little archways in the back here. I mean, look at that. Just look at that. This is absolutely a building. Look at the dome up top here, and like the catwalk, lookout tower area, and all the pillars and columns and the trim work. And I mean, look at the columns up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's falling back onto its weakest part here, melting down. You can see all the columns. Look at these, look like statues or big carvings of like some, almost looks Egyptian here. Like, I bet you these were like statues. I mean, look at the architecture up here and the trim work. Look at that little doorway up here, another tower and pillars and columns and that doorway. That is absolutely a building front right there. That is just the craziest thing in this whole video, and why I wanted to show it to you so much. It's freaking insane. I mean, look at these people. Have absolutely no clue that they're, well, I shouldn't assume that, I suppose, but pretty good chances they're looking right at that and have absolutely no idea it's a building. That's how indoctrinated we become. We're just standing right there, and it's like no big deal. It's like right in front of our face. Look at that. Another nice building, some walls. Another building over here, crimped on its right hand side, melting down into the ground. Probably all building back into over this mud flooded hill right here. Little domes, little pillars, columns, probably entryway right here. This is pretty cool. Look at that building, huh? Towers, pillars, columns. You can go all day down here in South America. That's why I just love it. Argentina, Chile, Peru. Oh my God, it's amazing. I mean, you could spend a week walking around in these places. Oh wow, did you catch that? Let's go back. Another amazing thing. Check this out. Right there. Look at that thing. It looks like a guard tower. Almost like at a prison or something. Or like a defense area. You can see the top of this fence. Or this wall, I should say. Has maybe these little areas of these windows or cutouts here where maybe they defended this area. With the lookout tower as well, coming down into this funnel or cone shape. A little doorway arch here through this hole. Definitely looks castle-like. Little defense areas along the top of the wall. Some pillars down here, maybe. You see this? See this structure right here? I mean, all of this something before. There's a reason for this here. Absolutely a building. Look at that guard tower. That little catwalk area. It's crazy. Another building, brick lines melting down onto the right side. And look at this thing. It looks like a parking garage. There's some little people that don't realize it's probably a parking garage. I mean, I'm not saying a bunch of people died in their cars in there, but I mean, look at that thing. Would it really surprise you if there's some people in there turned to stone too? And up here, the different hallways, that at the end of the hallway, you can kind of come to the end and look out the window. I mean, you can see this shit. Look at different lines, towers, pillars, columns, melting down, all mud flooded. Hello, anybody home? I mean, look at this thing. It looks like a submarine or something. Little truck down here, present day truck. See these buildings with the triangle roofs on them? They look like little Last Supper huts or something. Lookout towers, different little houses on this thing, whatever. Looks like a big skull up here with his two eye cavities, but I'm sure it's not. It's more to do with the building, I'm sure. Look at the little pocket survival pillars and columns in there, like it's a ship or something. Like you're walking down the outside of a ship or a cruise ship or something. Underneath here, with the railings and shit. It's nuts. I mean, see, this random thing like this was something before. I mean, that's why it's there in the first place. More melted buildings, the 45-degree angle. Depends how way they were facing from this event is the way they melted. Look at this thing. You could spend a week walking around this one too. Find a way in, find a treasure or something. Well, I'm sure some of these buildings, if they had treasures, it'd be pretty melted to rock too, but look at that, another 45-degree angle. a mound here because it was something before, and not just a bunch of mineralization from cosmic coincidence. You can see the melting down, not going up. Look at this perfect little tower up here, huh? Wow. I love how wind and rain erosion loves to sculpt castles into the mountains. It's so intelligent. I mean, look how intelligent wind and rain and stuff is. It just knows how to make buildings. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing. Just some more dead things. Now, you know what's interesting about this part, besides the beautiful horses, is I think this whole area might be some kind of ancient solar panel field or something. Well, not necessarily solar. I think these are like harvesting, like free energy towers harvesting ether out of the atmosphere. Just imagine a whole shitload of them doing it at once. Maybe this is how they did it back in the day, like we do present day with the solar fields. Because in the old Tartarian Empire, uh, in the old buildings, they had these little towers to the domes where it seemed like each building had its own ether harvesting tower, if you will, and this kind of looks like the same feel, like that the old world buildings that had all these. It looks like a bunch of them in the same area all together. So this could have been a big energy conducting area. This here again, remember we were talking about finding a lot of Titans on Google Earth that are in the fetal position, curled up here upon death, right? Wouldn't we all be if we were dying and or you had a real bad stomach ache or something? So this could be one of the eye cavities, and the rest of the skull is either kind of buried or crushed into the ground. We have that fetal position with all the transition metal colors of biology, so this is most likely something that was walking around before as well in its fetal position. Alright, you could tell the discoloration here of all these transition metal colors compared to the rest of the background. That's how you distinguish anatomy from the background. So all this red iron oxide is also in your blood. Okay, transition metals, different transition metals in your blood. Great transition metal biology. Transition metals make minerals. Minerals make the rocks. In a mud flood event, that is. Of course, you would decay if you're just laying on the surface and exposed to the elements, but this is all petrification from a mud flood mixed with some other events. Right here is your serpent and dragon anatomy of the scaling here. So this is buried dragon transition metals here to get the transition metals, give you the color. And the triangle is the serpent identifier, the triangle scale markings. This is also, I want to just back up again real quick to show you this. When we're talking again wind and rain erosion, okay, wind is not going to blow harder in between here than it is on the surface. and rain is not going to rain in between here harder than it is on the surface. That's not what's creating these triangles. Erosion is real, but it's taken away from what was really once there. So the biology of the scaling was there first, and it is eroding. Now it's eroding, but it's eroding from what was really once there. Is why it's holding its shape. It's not that the wind and rain erosion is creating a shape. Okay. Now, some would argue that because these triangles are against the mountainside, that's why the wind and rain is blowing it into a triangle shape. But that still wouldn't make sense because, the rain's not going to rain harder against here than it isn't out over here. Neither is the wind, okay? This all should erode the same and terraform Earth from erosion the same way over such a small area like this. So that's how you know these things were in place first. Okay. Again with the triangles, okay, and the transition metal colors of anatomy. Wind and rain's not creating these shapes, nor is the runoff from water in the mountains is not creating this. Sure, it is eroding it now because it's taken away from what was really once there. And sure, it could be opening up these crevices a little bit more than they already were. I do agree with that. Maybe making these triangles smaller over time. I do agree with that because, like I said, erosion is real, but it's taken away from what was really once there. From this angle, you could see the anatomy, okay? Now, some are gonna argue that the water running down the mountain is creating these lines as I run off, and yes, it is. I do agree with that because erosion is real, but it's taken away from what was really once there and exposing the biology lines. This is dragon scales. This is dragon transition metals and biology color. Okay, again, this is all dragon anatomy. When you get the triangles like this is the exterior of the dragon. It has this type of scaling. Okay, you can see over this general area that wind and rain that's pummeling down here should be terraforming this earth less geometric and less symmetrical like this. Okay, wind and rain is not going to be so symmetrical and geometric. All right. That's just ridiculous. And if you need further proof that this is the exterior of the serpent, I'll show you the interior in a minute. Oh, well, I'll be goddamn. Now, as the serpent runs way, way down here for miles and miles and miles, as you can see the exterior of the scales, it goes down, swoops around, comes back around this way. Okay. And you could see the interior now of the concave, decayed body. Okay, it's decaying and eroding, so we're losing it over time. But you could see the muscle, the tissue, the strapping. You could see right here the vertebrae, the thicker ridge that was in the middle. This even could be the vertebrae right here in the middle because this curvature here looks like the outside wall to me. That's even more buried. Alright, so it could be from either wall here, it could be the exterior, this could be the vertebrae. It's kind of hard to tell in this shadowing dark area, but for sure, right out here, you have the interior of what the body of this serpent or snake look like with this biology, muscle tissue and strapping. And like I said, vice versa, it could be going this way. And this is the exterior, all the scaling. So see, this is why I hate to, take it upon myself to. I don't mean to write on this guy's coattails here that he did all this hard work making this video, but someone's got to talk about what we're potentially really looking at here. And since it's not mentioned, I can't let it go to waste. I mean, look at this stuff. It's amazing. Did you see those two little people for comparison? Let's go back a second. Look at these two little people. I mean, if this dragon even tried to bite you, you probably would just slip between its teeth like dental floss, because it probably couldn't even get you. You're so tiny. I'm feeling like an elephant head in the mud on this one, but we do have some of the lines, of course, that could be either brick lines or anatomy lines. Kind of looks like a eye area there, like the top of a head of elephant buried in mud. I'm not sure though, could be brick lines because we got that 45-degree angle melting building pattern here. I don't know if that's a salt flat, I'm not sure. So many undiscovered places and places people haven't been before. It's insane. Look at the temple. Look up here again. Temple. Brick lines or stairway or something. I mean, could be ancient smart city again there or something. Areas like this, areas like this are kind of my favorite places to mud fossil hunt, because you get these different layers of time here with the washouts in the river bottoms, and when you have sides of the hill exposed like this, you get the different layers of time, so you can find the differences between rock are fun to study, and all these little pieces right here, although they could be parts of other broken off rocks, but they're usually other flooded mud fossil creatures and stuff. So it's fun to find the little body parts too, as much as it is the big ones and the melted buildings. But a lot of little organs in these hillsides from different floods over time, flooding and petrifying different animals or people. As you all know, as we research this throughout the years, these are all little spleens, kidneys, hearts, different little organs like that, livers. And in these river bottoms are the best places to find this kind of stuff, because over different events throughout time, Um, Animals get flooded, or even if they were already turned to stone in a previous flood, they through different events they keep getting flooded and washed down into these waterways. So you find all kinds of different mud fossils in different stages of fossilization from different time periods, all kind of washed down together into these drainages, and it's fun to kind of look to see what you can find and compare the differences between them. Um, Even with the heart fossil alone, I mean, they all look just so different. You would think they're all different kinds of rocks, but they're all very much the same, and they're all hearts. And the heart is pretty similar throughout species with function, flow, and the looks of it. But through the petrification process, depending on whatever these creatures went through or how they petrified, or the different factors that played into their particular heart and how it became petrified, seems to be very different. So that it actually makes the rocks look different, even though they're all the same type of heart. There's so many different things that play into it that make things look different. They could be buried deeper than other things, or being under more pressure. Could be fresh water versus salt water. Could be somewhere exposed to the sun for a long time, then reflooded under mud again, then exposed to the sun again. Some might have never seen the light of day. There's so many factors that kind of trick you that these rocks are all different, but they're really the same. It could be species specific as well. Even though I said a lot of hearts are the same, there are some subtle differences. There are some different things about certain creatures of why they would have been caught in certain areas, depending on their habitat and how they preserve that way too. And then you get differences in the rock as well as that way. But I'm kind of running off on a tangent here. But I just wanted to point that out. So if you're getting into the mud fossil hunting hobby, you want to go into your river bottoms and drainages, basically, to make long story short, is what I'm trying to say, because there's just so many differences, and it's fun finding that they're all actually similar. This right here looks like a big sleeping titan head. And I am in agreement with some people. I do understand things can look like a face by accident, and I do believe things could erode into a face by accident or break off and look like something. But for the most part, the mud fossil theory and the research isn't seeing funny faces in the clouds. Hopefully people are taking a step further, and as they find a skull or a certain body part that they're working it out anatomically in their own mind and proportionally correct from every body part where it should be, is a more accurate way of researching mud fossils, because you don't want to just jump on the first pretty face you find like this and say, oh yeah, it must be a titan. But it's really pretty potential of being a titan head that's turned into a hillside here. But this is a good example of, jumping the gun here, because when you look at the rest of it, it could be heavily decayed and eroded, of course, body part, but we don't really have enough evidence for the rest of it to really tie it in to call this a face. It's still fun to assume it is, and it really looks like it is a sleeping titan with the eye closed here and the nose and the mouth as well. A few other angles coming up, it looks pretty cool too, but stuff like this, I agree, it can happen by accident sometimes, so people don't need to think we're completely crazy, because I agree with you too. But there's a lot out there that, if you understand your own body parts and how anatomy works, it all ties up together. So how to really start looking at this stuff. Now, Titans on their back have the classic signature look like this. Because, like I said, if you wanted to try it right now in your own house, you can lay on your back, and you'll notice that the highest point of your body here is the bottom of the rib cage where the sternum is that pokes up. And then you'll notice your chest kind of slightly goes back and then crimps down at your neck, and your skull's right there. And you can kind of see it almost looks like it has a hole for the eye in the skull. And so when we're back here at the neck and the crimp, we're going to go back up to the top of that. Your rib cage is up here, and then we're descending back down over the tummy. Okay, this is just like it would be with yourself laying on the ground. We come up to the kneecap area. You can see how it's pretty white there because your knee is a pretty complicated joint, which would petrify pretty well actually. If you were petrified, your joint's pretty solid bone and everything. Excuse me, let's just go back for a sec. Let's see if we can find that Titan again. Wasn't done talking about him. So like I said, this kneecap would preserve pretty well, being such a big joint. But then I wanted to point out that it crimps down again where your ankle would be before the foot mound. Okay. So remember, we have that crimp at the ankle and then the crimp at the neck. So this is the signature potential Titan here, the way you can kind of find them laying on the ground from a distance. And the other thing to point out about it is the red transition metal colors, because remember, we're going to get that in anatomy too, just like we are with the red brick. But when you have that classic signature crimp at the neck and then the crimp down at the ankles, you get your foot mound and then your head mound with the correct proportion of the torso with the rib cage top right here. That's what you want to look for. Okay, remember again with the nice triangles of the dragon scales or serpent scales. Okay. See how that one we were just talking about, like the face in the clouds, the could be ones. You can see from this angle how it really looks pretty nice, like a sleeping titan. Pretty cool, right? In this one, I kind of like the best of them because you can see the sleeping titan face here again, but then it comes up to the top of the shoulder and the back comes down, and this actually looks like the arm right here wrapped over, because you can see all these straps and muscles and like ligament tissues of like all these lines, like it could be an arm. So this is the kind of thing I was mentioning before, is like instead of just calling it a titan because you think you see a face, you gotta look for some other parts, and as you can see here, very more evidence of things going the right way in terms of anatomy to kind of make sense of things. Now we kind of lose the arm down here in the valley, so you can't tell for sure if it's separated or not from a different mountain, but you can kind of see that this type of terrain and hillside matches this area right here, which is separated from this area right here. So it's kind of like its own thing that matches this area, which kind of ties into being the same type of terrain and grass right there as this mountain. This arm is right here is the same type of terrain and color as this, and then there's like a transition to this type of land. There he is right here again, but very well well could just be melted, whatever, decayed, whatever, of something else. Could just be by chance one. More potential brick building here, melted brick building. And I bet you if you scaled along this wall, you could probably pull out some intact bricks, and maybe in a couple hours end up with like say 45 of them. And then by when you brought them all back down to the ground, you can kind of line them all up and notice that they're the same size. Especially in like this area here, this little hole looks like a little pocket of survival. Like you could pull a couple little bricks out of there, some perfect bricks. And then the other bricks get swollen from heat or deteriorated because they're more exposed to the elements over time. Our buildings. This hillside's interesting here because I wanted to show you again the similarities and differences between melted brick lines and anatomy lines. As you see here, we have like this twisting and curving of what you would think is more anatomy, kind of like muscles and tissue and ligaments. And you can see how this grayish color is connected to this grayish color. And if we're going to call this anatomy and it's connected, you could see how anatomy would also give you that brick line look, but it's really compressed, muscles and tissues. But then when you look over here, some of these can also be the red brick dust with the brick lines. But like I said, we still have the transition metal colors and the iron oxide. So it's hard to distinguish between these unless you're probably right up on them, not sitting here on an iMac. So you'd probably have to hike around these places and look a little closer. But so I just wanted to show you that, like how you can get the anatomy lines with the anatomy plus, the brick lines with the brick. Again, nice washout waterways, big area, pretty undisturbed, probably out in the middle of nowhere. Good area to look for washout mud fossils, little hearts, kidneys, liver, spleen, different organs that are petrified in their fascia tissues. How they remain, hold their shape so well is because of these individual fascia tissue sacs around each organ. And yeah, just more body parts of little animals or people or whatever all through here. The transition metals give you your mineralization for rock, and that's how you get rock. Of course, you wouldn't be a rock. You would have deteriorated if you were exposed to the elements like oxygen and sunlight and wind and rain and, bacterias. But you get all this rock, this mud fossil rock, from being mud flooded. No oxygen for bacteria. These creatures are mud flooded. No oxygen for bacterial decay. It seems like the anaerobic bacteria didn't do so hot either. Maybe for some pH chaos or salt being involved, because salt helps preserve food really well as well. People use salt on their food. So you have salt, pH chaos. These animals are buried under a cold, wet environment, under a lot of pressure. So, over time, the transition metals in the blood kind of mineralize since nothing's breaking down. And over time, it turns into a rock. And so that's how you get all these different little body parts turned to stone, which eventually brought back up to the surface again through different earth changes and glacial movement. The glaciers come through and dig all these mud flooded body parts out of the ground again, distribute them through different floods. So that's how the rock gets all over the world. That was kind of once buried and unearthed again from different earthly events. Then by that time it's already stone body parts. And then once it's up here on the surface, starts to get oxidized, starts to get moss and lichens that like to adhere to the bloody areas, like the holes in the rock and the iron oxide bleeding holes and stuff like that is where you can kind of see where the lichen and moss like to adhere to, because there's still nutrients in these rocks where they bled from. So the moss and the lichens attach into those areas because it's the easiest access for nutrients to feed off of that's still coming out of the rock. So that's why a lot of this rock has moss and lichen on it, is because these type of species of that are liking the nutrients in the rock. Pretty fascinating. So that, when I'm hunting for this stuff, I always I do look for the moss and lichen. I kind of trust where it's bleeding from, depending on the moss and lichen, and it kind of tells you a lot. You let the moss and lichen tell a story. What I meant to say is the moss and lichen kind of gives evidence of what body part it was, because it shows you where it bled, is the point I was trying to get across. South America is definitely on the bucket list for me. Such a beautiful area and great for mud fossil hunting, hiking around. Definitely want to get a buddy system going and head on over there sometime. But anyways, here he is, Miloš Kitrovic. I recommend subscribing to his channel. Goes all over the world, filming these places. I watched this one already too, in Yemen. There's some great mud fossils in here. I think I'll narrate that one as well.